speaking of just pushing things, and it's just unbelievable that this guy continues to not be able to wrap his head around the idea of what he says about oil and the oil companies and the gas stations, and then his climate agenda. We have this story here where President Joe Biden is reportedly considering declaring a national climate emergency as soon as this week to activate powers that would let him regulate fossil fuels without congressional authorization. Now, you see this from the right and you see this from the left, the Democrats, continually trying to push certain emergency powers or using, the executive branch to push certain things as well. I'm not for when Trump did it necessarily, and I'm not for when Joe Biden does it necessarily. It really does depend on what they're doing. I do think executive powers and utilizing emergency declarations is used a lot as an overreach of power. I don't like it. Again, when Republicans do it, I don't like when Democrats do it. Congress is there to be a mechanism and one of the branches to enact certain things. If you want it, then we have to go through that process. You're not always going to get what you want. Things move slowly. It was designed and built that way. And that's why we've gotten so far in this country compared to other democracies. And I've said this a lot on the show as well. For the new viewers, we are considered an extreme outlier in terms of democracies and republics that have lasted throughout human history. So that should make you kind of scared in some way, shape, or form, because the further we go along that outlier, we're going to be ultimately technically moving closer to becoming becoming a superpower that doesn't exist anymore. A democracy and republic in a nutshell doesn't exist anymore. So there's a quote here from the White House, and it says, "The president made clear that if the Senate doesn't act to tackle the climate crisis and strengthen our domestic clean energy industry, he will ultimately push forward in considering all options, and no decision has been made as of yet." Remember, all decisions are on the table with this guy. He's doing everything he possibly can. It's just the messaging is at like a second grade level with this guy and his administration. And the reason why I'm saying that is because there's no thought really behind it. You were told something, and so you just jot it down on a piece of paper. You're told to do something, like, oh, okay. So he made this promise on his campaign trail. He made the promise to his base, all these crazy leftists with this climate change stuff they want to push here and kind of ruin our economy, which is happening right now with oil prices. And he's pushing this, that he wants to create certain things with climate change and appease these climate alarmists. And at the same time, he's telling gas companies to do certain things, that tell gas companies to invest in more oil, invest in more refineries and all these things. They're going, why the hell would we do that? You're trying to make us obsolete. You're trying to get rid of us. You're trying to end our industry. Why would we go and take on a certain amount of risk when you're trying to go against us? It doesn't make sense. And it doesn't make sense so much so that I think it was Chevron's CEO that came out and he said that there's not going to be another oil refinery built in the United States ever. That's how bad things have gotten with the Democrats and their climate change agenda, their narrative that they're pushing, where oil companies don't even want to invest in certain aspects of refining, of producing, because of what Democrats are trying to do. So the emergency facing Democrats is that there is not enough votes in the U.S. Senate to pass Biden's climate alarmist agenda. Most recently, you have Senator Joe Manchin sank an expansive spending bill last week that would have spent billions of dollars on subsidizing green energy initiatives and cutting carbon emissions. And then you had Bernie Sanders being trotted out saying that he's sabotaging, that Joe Manchin is sabotaging the president's agenda. Yeah, Bernie Sanders. That's another one, right? He should have his first spot on The View in a sense of a host, because he says asinine things and has been saying asinine things for literally 40 years. But then Bernie Sanders will come out and say that Joe Manchin has been saying a bunch of nonsense for the last year in terms of his agenda. Talked about that the other day on the show. And if you haven't seen it, go ahead and check it out. That episode on the show is just it's ridiculous what Bernie Sanders says and does in contradiction. Manchin said he was concerned about the inflationary pressures another massive spending bill would put on the economy at a time where high prices are the number one concern for most Americans. Wait, Joe Manchin, be specific, because there's a lot of Joes taking place here. Joe Manchin is talking about pure logic. You're saying, Joe, if Joe Biden goes and pumps more money out there, whether it's through subsidies or putting out checks, that could hurt the economy, that could ultimately have a concern with inflationary pressures? Are you kidding me? But it shows you, again, the Democrats don't understand this. You have literally Democrat Gavin Newsom of California wanting to push out and will push out more checks to help with inflation. Let that sink in. The Democrats want to give more checks. They want to give another spending bill, shoulder out another one to help with inflation and climate change. And then they can't fathom why things go down the dumpster in terms of the economy in terms of why things get more expensive. They can't get it. They can't wrap their head around it. I'll give you a local kind of example. In California, you have this happen in Seattle as well. But in Los Angeles and Seattle, you have these places and these Democrats, progressive leftists that vote to increase the minimum wage, whether it's for the locality or for the state. And then they can't fathom why things are more expensive. They're, oh my gosh, well, why is that burrito $20? Well, why are you paying someone $20 to scoop food on a pan? Because you voted for it, you idiots. That's why it's so expensive. But then you have Karine Jean-Pierre the other day going, oh, well, hey, we're going to boast about people having higher wages. And we're trying to lower inflation at the same time, but we should be happy they're getting paid higher wages. You knucklehead, higher wages increases inflation because it costs that to make and produce that good to be even more. That is literally the definition of inflation, but they don't get it. There's also a study that came out that showed that the vast majority of not Republicans, but Democrats had no business experience. So it should come to no shock, I suppose, to myself and others that you have a bunch of Democrats that have no business experience, don't know how economics works, don't have like a foundational level of understanding of basic concepts to expect them to be able to run the government officially and the economy. So I don't know, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself here and expecting too much from our own politicians. But Democrats are fearful, again, that the promise of all these things are just going to fall through the dumpster because Democrats fear that Biden will be unable to deliver on his campaign promise of cutting U.S. emissions roughly by half by the end of this decade without congressional action. Lawmakers have urged the president to take matters in his own hands and before the midterm elections in November, where Republicans are widely expected to win back control of one or both of the houses in Congress. Quote, this is the moment, an important moment. There's probably nothing more important for our nation and our world than for the United States to drive a bold, energetic transition in its energy economy from fossil fuels to renewable energy. His name is Jeff Merkley of Oregon. Again, if you're from Oregon in terms of a politician, you have no room to talk. I mean, literally Portland, Oregon is having a massive spike in crime. They can't get their ish together. And speaking of Seattle, up there as well, including Portland, all these, and Los Angeles and San Francisco, all these places that continually just are driving their own localities just right into the dumpster. They're going to come out and say this crazy crap. I love how he puts in there, there's probably nothing more important for our nation and our world. But yet you have China building coal factories. I mean, it's not clean coal. And I know it's kind of an oxymoron in a sense of talking about clean coal, but there is clean and there's just straight coal. They're just producing all this craziness. And the analogy that I give people is just say for the sake of argument, that the earth was a big dumpster. Everybody's throwing their trash in this dumpster. America comes along and goes, well, we're going to cut half of our trash that we're putting in the dumpster in half. And everyone else is like, fine, we'll just throw in more trash. So they're trying to, at the sake of hurting ourselves, help the world supposedly by doing all these things. But we're the only ones that end up getting hurt. China doesn't get hurt. India doesn't get hurt. All these other countries don't get hurt that are just polluting the crap out of the world. But we're the ones that ultimately have to screw ourselves and shoot ourselves in the foot because of these Democrats. Merkley and Senator Sheldon Whitehouse urged the president to take executive actions, saying that such of a move would unchain Biden from waiting for Congress to pass legislation. I've talked to the White House about going on offense and being aggressive and doing all the things that is within his executive powers to do that have not so far been done, White House said, though senators did not get into specifics. We all know what he meant. Well, according to the Washington Post, climate activists have urged Biden to use executive powers to halt exports of crude oil, limit oil and gas drilling in federal waters, and direct federal agencies, including the Federal Emergency Management Agency, to spend taxpayer dollars subsidizing renewable energy sources. But hey, they're doing everything they can. Biden's doing everything he can. The Democrat Party's doing everything they can. While they're pushing this agenda, imagine where the oil companies are coming from. That they want Biden to use his executive powers to halt exports on crude oil, limit oil, and gas drilling in federal waters. I mean, help me out here, folks. Does this not sound ridiculous? It doesn't seem hard for me to sit back and go, man, you have two different agendas taking place. You want more gas while at the same time you want to get rid of gas. But the Biden administration risks making inflated gas prices worse if it cracks down oil and gas production. Gas prices have fallen nearly 50 cents per gallon over the last 30 days. Woo! Party, everybody! Woo! 50 cents, citing Biden's decision to open the Strategic Petroleum Reserve and use diplomacy to encourage U.S. allies to produce more oil. It's amazing that they're talking about how the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, again, this is the reserve that's supposed to be used for natural disasters. Hopefully we don't have one of those anytime soon. I love how while they're pushing all this climate change stuff, right? And they're utilizing all these crazy hurricanes, earthquakes, whatever the hell it may be, twisters, tornadoes, all that stuff, and attributing it to climate change. The very thing that we're supposed to use in order for FEMA and other avenues to get gas until things get back up and running after those natural disasters, they just want to deplete and give some of it to China and other people. It's just like, it's endless. It's endless stupid decisions coming from this guy. So that's with Biden making dumb decisions along with his Democrat counterparts. And because of those actions, his approval rating is plunging. I mean, plunging isn't even the correct term. I don't know what's worse than plunging, but his ratings are lower than Trump after Trump had his January 6th debacle. His ratings are that low. So President Joe Biden approval has hit a new low of 38%. Who are those 38 that still approve him? That's what I want to know. 38% as Americans lose faith in his ability to handle soaring inflation, according to a new survey. The new CNN poll found that nearly 7 in 10 disapprove of Biden's performance, a new high. Only a quarter of those surveyed approves of how Biden handles inflation. These are those knuckleheads out there that would continue to vote for people like Gavin Newsom, AOC, Bernie Sanders, Ilhan Omar, and that squad. Those are the people that continue to get chauffeured out with all these things. I mean, these people are asinine. These are the same people that will go out and like block traffic in the Capitol and get arrested for it, and have Ilhan Omar and AOC join them. And the reason why I want to bring this up is because there was a story that was released yesterday where AOC pretended to be arrested during one of these protests for abortion and women's rights and all these things, with holding her hands behind her back and then giving a power and a fist bump to everybody, and then putting her hand behind her back as if she's arrested again. We got a clip of this. Let's go ahead and show it.
She's a House member, yeah.
House leader?
Yeah. No, she's a member of the House.
So this whole theater and theatrics is not just pushed by the White House, but it's also pushed by Democrats in Congress. And then they can't fathom why people don't have faith in them, why people don't trust them. Not only did AOC go out and take falsified pictures during the border when Trump was in office, but this is the type of stuff that she chauffeurs out again by placing her hands behind her back and pretending like she's arrested. She also was pretending like she was harassed by some reporter guy the other day on Capitol Hill when he was talking about her booty and her being Latina and stuff like that. And she gave him a peace sign and all this stuff, and then she pretended like she was scared. You also have Black Lives Matter pushing the same type of theatrics, saying they're fearful and all these things, when you have Candace Owens merely knocking on her door, ringing the doorbell, politely asking if she's home. But these theatrics continue, and that's why people don't have faith in them. And not only do the theatrics continue, but because of those theatrics and the PR nightmare that they create for themselves, nobody believes they're actually going to get anything done, because that's all it is. It's theater, it's acting, it's fake. It's not believable. And then you have Joe Biden on top of that, losing his cognitive abilities to speak correctly, to walk correctly, to climb up stairs, to ride a bicycle, to eat his food, that he's literally being fed pills, according to Tucker Carlson from Fox News. And there's people reporting on this that actually saw it happen. That anytime he goes in public, he's being fed pills by Jill Biden, his wife, and that she's monitoring it literally on an hour-by-hour basis. So no wonder nobody has faith with any of these Democrats and the president. No wonder. The poll was conducted on June 13th to July 13th, and it comes shortly after the Biden administration released the latest CPI report, which showed inflation soared 9.1%, the biggest hike since 1981. I wasn't even alive in 1981. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. Americans are losing faith in the president, with the poll finding that nearly 8 in 10, so 80%, think things are getting worse, a level not seen since February 2009. And just 31% think that the president has had the right priorities. Plus 68% said that Biden is not even paying attention to the worst problems in the country. Immigration? Hello? We literally have over 200,000 people crossing the border every single month. Yeah, he's not paying attention to anything. You can't expect him to pay attention to anything. He's not there. He's literally not there. He's gone. We showed a clip where he just was reading a teleprompter and he couldn't say kleptocracy. So he's just off. And he looks lost. I mean, his eyes almost went chameleon style, just out in different directions. So we can't expect the guy to know what the hell's going on, to care about anything. Biden's approval rating for handling the economy stand at 30%, and 25% support his efforts to hold down inflation. So a quarter of Americans expect him to hold down efforts to hold down inflation. You want to have faith in the American people, but sometimes you're like, hell, there's still people out there that just are lost, as well as Joe Biden. So, I mean, you guys have corrected me. Supposedly 81, 82 million people voted for this guy. I mean, you got 25% at least right there, right? So it's just crazy. What's more, 75% say inflation and cost of living are the most important economic problem facing their family, and jump from 43% just last summer. So things continue to get worse. And folks, the numbers just, we're looking at things from like 1973 here. We're looking at things from 1981. I mean, this is how low records are going. So Joe Biden's breaking records in a negative way, continuing to drive this country and the economy down into the drain. Nothing's going to change here until you get a Republican in office, or Republicans in November being elected. I think once we have that happen, if we take back the Senate, that's going to be a little bit harder. This House we'll take back for sure. Maybe we'll see a little bit of change here. Who knows? But the president's going to continue to be chauffeured out, along with AOC, Ilhan Omar, Karine Jean-Pierre, his economic advisors, spinning the news for all of us to have to sit here and listen to, completely hitting our head against the wall with everything. But hey, folks, it's content, and it's all the news and information you need to know about. I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Bald Brad Show. If you did, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all our future content.